I'm Marie Richards. I had an idea to develop a personalized writing workbook to help my student prepare for the IELTS academic writing test. ChatGPT took 35 minutes to draft this 56-day IELTS writing workbook. But the most important part was not the speed or the name on the cover of the workbook. Before I corrected Emma's writing, she had to assess the writing herself. The real question was this: could she spot her weaknesses while she still had time to fix them? One timed essay showed the starting point. Her ideas were relevant, but her paragraphs drifted and grammar weakened under pressure. I gave ChatGPT that essay, her recurring errors, target band, her study time, and test date. It produced the first draft of a 56-day path, very clearly, not 56 random worksheets, a clear sequence, the baseline, focused practice, self-scoring, rewriting, gate checks, timed essays, and mock tasks. One rule continued throughout. Emma had to judge her writing before I did. She asked, "Did I answer the task? Which paragraph is the weakest? Which error keeps returning?" Then I compared her judgment with the evidence, corrected what she missed, and adjusted the next practice. But this case exposed a problem that many independent tutors know. We're not short of lesson ideas. We're short of continuity. We teach, correct, and start all over again while remaining the only person who can explain what is wrong. A learner can enjoy every lesson, but still depend on the teacher for every judgment. This workbook was my attempt to change all that. She began with a baseline. She learned to examine her writing through the IELTS criteria. She practiced individual skills using writing frames and planning tools. She rewrote weaker sentences and sections after assessing them herself. Then she moved toward timed essays and full writing mocks. Her self-assessment did not have to be perfect at the beginning. My role was to compare her judgment with the evidence, provide feedback, and help her take greater ownership of her assessment over time. Scaffolding gave her the next step. Spaced reviews and retrievals required her to recall earlier learning and use it again and again. Self-scoring, error logging, rewriting, and weekly gate checks required her to revisit earlier problems and apply what she had learned in a fresh attempt at writing. Crucially, most importantly, after almost every core writing task, she assessed her work before I did.
Why? Because the workbook kept asking her to look at her own performance before waiting for me to interpret it. A personalized course of lessons should do more than customize content. It should gradually transfer some of that assessment and judgment to the learner. Her goal was to master IELTS academic writing. The workbook recorded an approximate Band 5.5 starting estimate and Band 7.5 as a stretch target, not a promise. Emma needed more than essay questions. I found that she needed stronger planning, clearer paragraphs, more controlled grammar, practice under time pressure, and a way to notice when those things were breaking down without someone immediately telling her. The first AI-produced version of the customized and personalized workbook contained 41 pages, 32 core writing sessions, 8 weekly evaluation gate checks, error logging, rewriting, mock tests, and a final review. It turned her practices into a particular task on a specific days. But the document itself was only a proposed route. Based on Emma's writing, I still had to determine whether the route was appropriate and what should happen next. Here is the first correction to the AI success story. A learner's name does not make a workbook personalized. A polished schedule does not prove learning either. Personalization begins when the learner's starting performance affects the sequence, and when later performance is allowed to modify the next practice. Focus parts it. In this case, ownership was part of the design. Emma was not only completing exercises, she was repeatedly asked to inspect and evaluate the writing she produced. After each core session, the workbook made Emma ask herself questions such as, did I answer the whole task? Did each paragraph stay on one clear idea? Did I use vocabulary I could control? Did I update the error log? She self-scored for the task response, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy criteria. The purpose was not to turn her instantly into an official examiner. It was to rehearse the decisions she would need when the teacher was absent. Her baseline work shows this beginning. Emma identified the practical skills paragraph as her strongest and the opinion paragraph as her weakest. She wrote that her ideas needed more detailed support, that her sentences did not flow smoothly enough, that she repeated simple vocabulary, and that subject-verb agreement was a frequent problem. Those observations matter because the diagnosis was no longer held only in the teacher's head. The learner could name several writing gaps herself. The workbook maintained a simple ownership loop. First, Emma attempted the task. Second, she assessed it before receiving my judgment. Third, she logged errors and selected a priority. Fourth, she rewrote. Then I could calibrate her judgment. What evidence supports that score? Did the revision solve the problem? Has this error appeared again? The teacher remained necessary, but the teacher was no longer required to do all the noticing of errors. The partial rewrite gives us visible evidence of uptake. In the baseline on the left of the screen, Emma wrote, also, these subjects are also necessary. In the rewrite on the right side of the screen, that became, in addition, these subjects are necessary. For this became, for this reason. Basic subjects in school became, play a key role in education. This was not a complete rewritten essay, and it did not remove every weakness. But it showed her using specific feedback and self-evaluation in a new attempt. The weekly live lesson then became a gate check, not an unrelated tutoring hour. Emma brought the attempt, her self-score, the error log, and the rewrite. My role was to compare her judgment with the evidence and decide whether to continue, repair, or change direction. This is an important distinction. Learner ownership does not mean leaving the learner alone. It means giving the learner a meaningful first role in assessment, followed by expert calibration. By week 8, the later writing showed a clearer position, more controlled paragraphing, safer connectors, and better vocabulary control. It also still contained tense inconsistency, parallel form problems, capitalization errors, and places where the explanation needed more depth. That mixed result is useful. The workbook did not magically eliminate every error. It made both progress and the next instructional needs easier to see. The final error, log and exam routine, turned those remaining problems into actions rather than surprises. So, did the workbook raise Emma from one official IELTS band to another? I cannot responsibly make that claim. Her early scores were self scores, and the later figures were instructional estimates, not a comparable official test result. As of making this video, she is reviewing the workbook in preparation for her IELTS writing exam. But now she owns her responsibility for progressing. What the documents do show is meaningful development in several targeted writing areas, continuing problems in others, and a learner beginning to explain the quality of her own work. The writing is the evidence. The workbook is the structure that made the evidence visible. In applied linguistics and assessment, this capacity is sometimes called evaluative judgment, learning to recognize quality in your own work and decide what to do next. Emma would not grade herself during the IELTS exam, but she would need to notice a drifting position, weak paragraph development, unsafe vocabulary, or a tense change while she still had time to edit her work. Self assessment was therefore not an extra reflection exercise. It was necessary rehearsal for independent writing performance. Here's a version you can use after your next online lesson. First, keep one authentic student attempt. Before correcting it, ask the learner to identify the strongest and weakest section. Ask for the student for a rubric, criterion by criterion judgment supported by a line from the work. Have the learner log no more than 3 recurring problems and choose one priority. Then give your feedback. Compare the two judgments, require a short rewrite, and begin the next lesson by checking whether the same pattern returns. Start with a 2-week path. Extend the time if available, when new evidence justifies the next stage. The most important outcome was not making Emma better at receiving writing corrections. It was helping her become better at finding what parts of her writing needed correction. That is what a customized writing workbook for one learner can do: connect lessons, preserve evidence, ensure logical scaffolding, and gradually transfer control and responsibility for progress to the student. In the next episode, I will look at a creative lesson that was added to the learning curriculum based on the student's writing gaps. Run on sentences. I'll assess the evidence for answering the question: did the student learn? How have you used a similar or different technique? What evidence showed you that your technique was helping the learner? Tell me in the comments. If you found this useful, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. In my next video, I'll share another practical student learning technique drawn from my experience teaching more than 14,000 online lessons.